So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn a collet. And a collet is basically just a piece of something. In our case, it's going to be walnut that goes in the jaws of our chuck. And we'll tighten down on the needle so that we can turn the needle without marking it up. Start off with my big skew for roughing here. Alright, next we'll part in. Switch to a slightly smaller skew for this work. Good. Now the other thing that I want is I want the collet to have a little nose on it. So what I'm going to do is just leave enough wood to turn once I get it in this chuck. So you'll see that in a second. So there it is. Okay? Step one, done. Now I'm just going to turn a nice round profile on the end. My little detail gouge here. Good enough. Now I'm going to turn a little flat. Okay. This is where things get kind of boring. Boring. Haha, see what I did there? I know. That's hilarious. You don't have to tell me, it's okay. I'm just going to bore straight through 3/8 inch hole. The last thing to do is cut a slot in the collet so that the hole in the collet can be closed up ever so slightly by the chuck. I'm going to use trusty old Diston. You can do this with a bandsaw, I'm sure. It just takes a second. I'm sure you can use the exercise. There we go. Now I'll just clean things up. Whoops. There we go. Now you can see it. It's not perfect, but it'll work. I'll just clean all the little burrs out of there and we'll be ready to roll. And while we're over here in the hand tool section of the shop, this is going to be our knitting needle. It's an 18-inch long piece of Bubinga that I ripped to 1/2 inch on the bandsaw. Alright, so I'm going to be using the Stanley plane here to knock the corners off. You can see, where are you? You can see it's got an adjustable mouth that I've set for a pretty wide opening and a pretty deep cut because I want to knock these corners off pretty fast. And you'll see how quickly this goes. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Fun. So we'll do that to all 4 sides. And I'll meet you back at the lathe. So I'm sure you've guessed by now the reasoning behind rounding all those corners, turning my nice square into an octagon. It's because the blank has to fit through the headstock. So now I'm going to grab it with the jaws, the pin jaws here, and I'm not worried about marring it now because it's going to be turned away shortly. One other thing that I have, I made a 3/8 inch notch in a board, and I'm going to use that to gauge my progress. Alright, get the rest in as close as we can and start turning. So the idea here is we're working on short sections at a time, and as we finish one section we'll pull it out a little bit and work on the next section. That way we're always working on supported wood and it's not going to have a chance to flap around and wiggle on us. As we get closer to the final dimension, we're going to take lighter and lighter cuts. And we're just about there. You'll have to experiment a little bit to find out how far out you can comfortably go. It's going to depend on the thickness of the needle, the wood, your turning technique. If you need to, you can use a finger for support under here. Helps a little bit with chattering. The idea here, of course, is not pressing into the piece, but just letting the wood come into the edge. And that'll help you cut without the wood flexing. So now, you can see we're pretty much about the size that we want. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark where I want the point of my thistle to be. It's going to be here, where I want the tip to be, which is going to be there. Cut just a little groove here, just to mark it. Make sure my diameter is good for the whole length. Just a little fat. We'll take care of that. Great. We'll do the same thing out here. Just make a little mark. We'll be cutting that off later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand and finish the main body, the main shaft first, and then we'll work on the end. Start off with the sandpaper on a block, try to get a nice even thickness. I'm going to be using a little bit of Triple E Ultra Shine. It's a polish for the wood. And then switch to a clean part of your cloth. Make sure you only use paper towels for this. You don't want anything getting caught up in the chuck and whipping around and taking your arm with it. Now I'm going to follow the same procedure with some shallow wax. So now I'm going to stick the collet on here so that we can turn the thistle on the end. Careful now, so you don't mess up your beautiful work that you just did. I'll cut off most of the excess here. Now we'll sand and finish it the exact same way, and then we'll get to the point. Thistle end all thistled up. Now we just got to make the current, or the point if you prefer. Nice and snug. So basically all I'm doing is I'm establishing the angle that I want, and then I'm just cutting deeper and deeper and deeper until I get to the end. I'll lengthen that just a hair. And call that done. Beauty. And now we sand. All right. Squeak. And there, my friends, you have it. A nice pair. Oops. Let me zoom out a little here. And there we have a nice pair of knitting needles. Any questions, any comments? Feel free to ask down in the comments section. And send me videos of your turning escapades. I would love to hear from you. Have a nice day. Oh, I love making editing work for myself. And knock it right out of the truck.